بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our 2021 Fiqh of Zakat workshop. Jazakallah everyone for joining us. Inshallah, we will be covering many important aspects of Zakat. And inshallah ta'ala, by the end of this workshop, today and tomorrow, inshallah, you will have a very good understanding of Zakat and all the rulings of Zakat. Now, this workshop is presented by Al-Ihsan, and we thank our sponsors for collaborating with us from Islamic Relief and National Zakat Foundation and Ask a Muslim. We'll talk about them more later on, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah to all of you for taking time out of your weekend. I know it's very rare for us here, especially lately, to get a sunny weekend. But may Allah reward you all for taking out the time and being with us here today. The discussions of Zakat are distributed over 4 main categories. Okay, and that is what our program will revolve around. We'll have the intro first, and then who is Zakat obligatory on, meaning who has to pay Zakat. And that will cover things about, age and the amount of wealth that you have and the dates and the year. We'll talk all about that. What is Zakat due on? This is one of the most important sections. We will cover, inshallah ta'ala, a wide range of topics, a wide range of types of wealth, and how Zakat is due on those, which one is Zakat due on, which one is it not. We'll talk about how to calculate Zakat, how do you bring into the equation things like debts or loans and so on. And lastly, who can the Zakat then be given to? We'll end inshallah ta'ala with a Q&A session. We will be allowing questions throughout the session as well. But what we ask is that throughout the session, you only ask questions that are about the topic that we are discussing or we have already discussed. What happens often in these Zakat workshops is people have a lot of questions, mainly about Zakat on properties or on pension funds and so on. And they ask those questions ahead of time. Inshallah, we will cover the details of the Zakat on all those matters and more. So we ask that you please wait until that section comes. Then if there's something else that you want to ask, maybe you have a particular situation, then of course, by all means, you may ask your question. To ask your question, you can either write it in the chat or you can put your hand up and we will allow you to unmute yourselves and ask the question, inshallah ta'ala. We ask that that everyone please keep your videos off. A reminder that if you do turn on your videos, everyone will be able to see them, not just the host. All right, and do keep your mics off as well, please, unless you're asking a question or answering a question. We will have some practice problems throughout to make sure that we are understanding everything that is being covered in here, inshallah ta'ala. And to our viewers on Facebook, if you wish to join in and ask questions, you can go to ihsan.ca, and on the homepage there's a link to join this webinar. You can come in and you can ask questions here, inshallah ta'ala. So, what is Zakat? Zakat, we'll look at the definition of Zakat stuff up ahead. But basically, as we know, Zakat is the wealth that we take out of our wealth and give it ahead to those who are in need. Okay, now looking at the lexical definition, Zakat has meanings of purity, increase, and truthfulness. We see the word Zakat being used in Quran and Hadith in all of these different meanings in different contexts. Purity is the meaning of purity exists in Zakat because Zakat purifies our wealth. Right? When we give Zakat, is as though we are taking out the filth of our wealth, leaving behind the purest of our wealth. Increase, as the hadith says, "Ma naqasat ma'lum min sadaqah," that giving something in sadaqah and zakat does not decrease one's wealth. And we're going to see a verse of the Quran just up ahead where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that anyone who gives their zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them even more multiplied back in return. And truthfulness, because zakat is something that speaks to the truthfulness of a person's iman. It is very easy for someone to say that, yes, I have paid my zakat, and no one will know whether they have or not. But a person knows that this is something between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is an obligation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon me, and He knows if I have paid it off or not. So that's why this meaning exists in zakat as well. And Islamically, you see the transfer of ownership of a certain amount of wealth that has been prescribed by the law from a rich person to a poor Muslim who is not a Hashimi and neither a slave or of a Hashimi for the sake of Allah. So this is a very technical definition. Basically, what it means is to take out a part of your wealth and give it to those who are entitled to that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And we'll look at this in a lot more detail, inshallah. Now, zakat, the obligation of zakat, according to most historians and muhaddiseen, was revealed in Medina Munawwara in the second year after Hijrah. There are verses of the Quran which talk about paying zakat that were revealed in Makkah Mukarramah, وَقِيمَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ and Surah Muzammil, and some other places that were revealed in Makkah. So what muhaddiseen say is that the zakat that was revealed beforehand, that was referring to the nafil sadaqah, the optional zakat, meaning the giving in charity. But others say that no, it wasn't an optional one. It was still obligatory, but there were no specific guidelines. There were no guidelines as to exactly who has to give it, how much they have to give, and who it could be given to. The zakat, as we have it today, these rulings and injunctions about zakat are revealed in the second year after Hijrah that everyone agrees on. Zakat plays the role of a large portion of our Islam, because if we look at the worships, the ibadat in our Islam, we see that there are some that have to do with our body. For example, salat, for example, siyam, right? It's about something you do with your body. Either you're doing some actions or you're refraining from certain actions. Some have to do with your body and your wealth, like Hajj, right? It's a physical journey and it's a monetary expense as well. And then there are some that have to do with your wealth. Okay, and there we have our injunctions of zakat, things about inheritance, and so on. Right, so that is where zakat takes its place within our Sharia. Now, these last 2 points of inner versus outer dimensions and zakat increases one wealth, this is actually all connected. Okay, because zakat is something that not only is it an obligation that we need to discharge, but zakat protects our wealth in many ways. Okay, what happens is that we often hear this term of barakah, right? Of there being blessing, the barakah in wealth, barakah in time, and so on. So the barakah, the blessings in our wealth, right? What does that mean? What does that mean? There's a lot of barakah in my wealth. So a very easy way to define this is that to do more with less. To do more with less. Okay, that's how barakah takes its form in our lives that we could actually observe. Okay, so barakah in time, for example, would mean that in less time you can do more. Barakah in wealth, for example, would mean that with less wealth you can accomplish more. Okay. Now, what happens is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us certain commandments about how we need to be using our wealth, how we need to be earning our wealth, and how we need to be using our wealth. If we do not adhere to those guidelines, that will pull out the barakah from our wealth. Then what happens? Well, we see the lack of barakah in wealth in a few ways. One of the ways is that you don't realize where your money is going. Okay, you don't have any major expenses, but whenever you look at your bank account or your cash balance, it's always low, and you don't understand where your wealth is going, why it's happening that way. Right? So that's a sign that there's some barakah missing from your wealth. Another thing that happens is that you are living your life normally, and all of a sudden something happens, some calamity, some occurrence that requires a significant monetary contribution from your side in order to alleviate that problem. So because you're in that situation, you have no way out of it, you give that zakat, sorry, you give that wealth, and then your life resumes back to normal as it was. But then when you look back and see what happened, you're living your life now exactly as you were living it before. But that amount of wealth is no longer in your life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends situations, circumstances, in which you end up having to spend your wealth, and you don't gain anything from it in your life. The only thing you're gaining is that the when you fell down because of that problem is getting you back up, right? But compared to your life beforehand and afterhand, your life is the exact same, right? And then there's many more as well, many more ways to look at this. But giving our sadaqah, giving zakat, it protects our wealth from this aspect. And we'll look at some ahadith ahead and verses of the Quran. One verse we have here, that the example of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is like a seed of grain which grows 7 spikes, and each spike is 100 grains. Right? So right there, it's already 700 times the reward. And Allah multiplies his reward for whomever he wills. Right? So 700 is the starting point. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies even more for whomsoever he wishes. We have an admonition on zakat that whoever is made wealthy, it's the hadith of Bukhari, whoever is made wealthy by Allah and does not pay the zakat on his wealth, on the day of resurrection, his wealth will be made like a bald-headed poisonous male snake with 2 black spots over the eyes. The snake will encircle his eyes and bite his cheeks and say, I am your wealth, I am your treasure. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited verse 180 of Surah Imran, and let not those who withhold, meaning let not those who withhold their sadaqah, their zakat, think it is better for them, rather it is worse for them. They will be yoked with it on the day of judgment. Right? That's the rest of the verse speaks to that. We have some more ahadith here. This is a hadith that we mentioned. It's going to come down here. Here, Aisha narrates that sadaqah is never intermingled with any amount of wealth without destroying it and rotting it. And so this we were talking about, that if that wealth remains, if it still exists in your wealth, it's going to end up destroying your wealth and making it rot. Indeed, those who recite the book of Allah and establish prayer and spend out of what we have provided them, secretly and publicly, can expect a profit that will never perish. That which you give in zakat, seeking Allah's pleasure, then those they shall receive their wealth increased and multiplied. So that is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when a person gives their zakat for the sake of Allah, that wealth is not lost to them. It will come back to them many, multiplied many folds in different ways. Right? It could be in the form of actual wealth coming back to them through some means. It could be through the means of some calamity that was going to come to them being removed from them, or it could be in the form of rewards in the hereafter. In any case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this promise that He will give back our wealth increased and multiplied. Now, a quick little look here. Zakat is often compared to taxes. Okay, as often compared to taxes. However, if we look at the intricacies and the details of zakat, we see that it is in fact very different from zakat. Okay, let's look at some of the points here. For one, zakat is a part of our deen, and um, taxes are something from the government. Right? The purpose is, firstly, it is worshiping Allah through wealth, meaning we're doing it for the sake of Allah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's the most important intention that a person must have when discharging their zakat. And we'll talk more about intention later on, inshallah. Zakat can be given only to Muslims. Taxes are for everyone. There are different criteria as to who has to pay zakat versus taxes, what it is due on, and the biggest difference is the amount. Okay, zakat is only 2.5%. Zakat is only 2.5% of the zakatable assets, and we'll talk about what that means. Whereas tax rates are extremely high compared to the zakat rate. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to take 20, 30, 40% of our wealth. He just wants us to give up 2.5%, and even that he has promised to return it to us. Right? And then who it could be given to in zakat is very some strict guidelines who could receive zakat, and then geographical limits. That something we'll talk about as well. But in any case, because zakat is an ibadah, it's a worship. That's the biggest difference. We do it for the sake of Allah, we get rewarded for it. Okay, whereas tax is something imposed by the government. Okay, getting into our first discussion, who is zakat fard on? 3 conditions: an adult, a Muslim, and a sane person. By adult, we mean a person who has reached the age of purity. Okay, and in Sharia, that the maximum age for that is usually around 15 years old. It could be as low as 9 or 10 years old as well. Okay, once a person is baligh, as we say, they have to pay zakat if they have wealth, which is equal to the Nisab we'll talk about. Next, they have to be a Muslim. Non-Muslims do not pay zakat, nor do they receive zakat. And they must be sane. Okay, a person who is in a continuous state of delirium, they don't know what is happening, zakat and other worships, other ibadat are not obligatory on them. There's one difference of opinion here, that the Hanafi school say that there is no wealth due, no zakat due on the wealth of children. However, the other 3 Imams, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahumullah, they say that zakat is due on the wealth of children and those who are not sane. But they say that the parent or the guardian should discharge it on their behalf. Okay, and many ulama of the Ahnaf, the Hanafi schools, they say that just as a precaution, because the children won't have that such large amounts of wealth that it would be difficult to pay the zakat on them. So the parents should, in any case, help the children discharge zakat on that wealth. And this brings up the topic of RESP. So the same thing applies there. If the RESP is in the name of the child's name, then according to the Hanafi school, the zakat is not due on it. Okay, but the other 3 schools it is. And again, as a precaution, even the Hanafi say that you should just pay zakat on it. Now, exactly how to calculate zakat on the RESPs, that we'll talk about later on, inshallah ta'ala. Now, calculating zakat. There are many aspects to look at when calculating zakat. The first one we'll look at is, what is the zakat year? What does the zakat year actually mean? How do you know what your zakat year is? We'll look at that, inshallah. And then how loans and debts affect our zakatable assets. And then we'll look at all of these types of different wealths, assets, and more. Some aren't listed here. Okay, so zakat is paid once every lunar year. Once every lunar year. That means that when you set your zakat date, when your zakat date is set for you, It needs to be according to the lunar year, not the Gregorian calendar that we follow. Okay. And once you initially have Nisab, okay, Nisab is a very important term in the discussion of Zakat. Nisab is the, in simple words, the minimum amount of wealth, of a type of wealth that you must have in order for Zakat to be due on it. Okay, so for cash, for example, the Nisab is around $400 or $500. Okay, I'll get you the more precise number, inshallah. It's always fluctuating based on the price of silver. So once you have Nisab, then you start counting the dates. Okay, and having Nisab, having that amount of wealth, means from your savings. If you only have enough money for your day-to-day expenses, okay, and you don't have savings in excess of the Zakat amount, then Zakat is not due upon you. Okay, regardless of how much your expenses may be and how much you may be earning. Okay, so for example, someone is earning $10,000 a month. Okay, but they have a very large family. They have a lot of children. They have a lot of expenses, and at the end of the month, they don't have any savings left. Okay, so let's say someone was living that way, the Zakat would not be due upon them. It's about having savings, the money that is in excess. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to burden us and take from the wealth that we need to take care of our family, to run our day-to-day affairs. What is in excess, that is what the Zakat is due from. So once you have Nisab of the excess, we're gonna talk about how much the Nisab exactly is, how it's calculated for different types of wealth. Once you have that, then from there you will look 1 year ahead, lunar year. Okay. Once that 1 year has passed, the amount of wealth you have at the end of the year, you will pay Zakat on that. Okay, it could be more than what you started with. Okay, now let's look at a couple of scenarios here. It'll make it a bit more clear. So this is a person who in Ramadan, they gained $800. Okay, they gained $800. So now that they have $800, they have met the Nisab. Okay, this red line represents the Nisab. Okay, just an approximation. Now they have met the Nisab, so their 1 year has started. Okay, now throughout the year, the wealth fluctuated. It went up, it went down, it went really down to 200, and then at the end of the year, they finished at again 900. Okay, they will pay Zakat on the 900 over here at the end of the year. So we look at the two ends of the year. Okay, if you had Nisab in the beginning and you have Nisab at the end, you will pay Zakat on what you have at the end of your lunar year. However, if there's a different scenario where this person had 800, went up, down a bit, and then they lost a lot, it fell, and they were in debt of $300. Then they got some more wealth and they finished the year at $600. So I'm going to jump back here to the previous slide. When I said that you look at the two ends of the year, as long as you have Nisab at the beginning and at the end, and you do not lose all of your wealth at any point throughout the year. Okay, if you lose all of your wealth at some point during the year, you go into debt, your Zakat resets. Your Zakat calendar resets. Okay, so in this case, this person could adopt 200. They didn't lose everything. Okay, they didn't lose everything. Because of that, their Zakat year did not reset. Whereas in the second situation, where this person went down into debt, now any dates that were set beforehand don't matter anymore. Any dates that were set beforehand do not matter anymore. We will look only now at the fact that over here, around Jumad al-Akhir, they dropped below zero. So right when they hit zero, all this didn't count anymore. It didn't matter that they had Nisab at the beginning of the year. Now we look at when do they regain Nisab? Where they regain Nisab back over here, about halfway through Rajab. So now this over here will become their new starting point of Zakat. Now they will look 1 year forward from this. If after 1 year they still have Nisab, and throughout the year they maintained any amount of wealth, then they will pay Zakat on what they have at the end of the year. Okay. Now the only difference of opinion here is about from Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. He says that Zakat needs to be paid 1 year after you gain the wealth. So for example, let's jump back here again. He says that, okay, here you had 800, so you pay Zakat. 1 year forward from here, you pay Zakat on 800. Here, the next day you had maybe 820. He says 1 year from now, you pay Zakat on 820, meaning that excess of the 20, right? And so on. He says that for every time you gain wealth, 1 year from that date, you will have to pay Zakat. Okay. Whereas the other Imams, they say that no, just what you have at the end of the Zakat year. That's what we look at. Okay. Now, what happens is that if a person is constantly gaining and losing wealth, they would find it very difficult. If they happen to be Shafi'i, they'd find it extremely difficult to keep track of and pay Zakat. Basically, you'd pay Zakat every day of the year, right, on certain amounts. So what many Shafi'i ulama have chosen to do is that they said don't do it every day, but calculate it every month. Okay, so for example, they say, okay, in Ramadan you had 800, next Ramadan you pay Zakat on the 800. In Shawwal you went 200, so next Shawwal you pay Zakat on the 200 more. Okay, and then whereas there's a deficit, then you wouldn't pay more there, wherever you increase. Okay, but even then, nowadays many Shafi'i ulama have opined with the rest of the Imams, and they say that just pay your Zakat once a year, and it will be discharged. Okay, they say that because they say that Zakat is difficult enough to calculate as it is, and to burden people with doing it every day or every month, it's just going to discourage them from even taking out the time to do it. Okay, so for the purpose of this discussion, we will be sticking with the opinion that you pay your Zakat once a year at the end of the Nisab year, as long as you did not, again, go into debt at any point throughout the year. Okay. Are there any questions up to this point before we move forward? We will be taking a break, inshallah. About a 10-minute break once we're about halfway through, but not just yet. No questions so far? All right. Let's talk about, okay, we have a question. If the money goes lower than Nisab at any point, then so it depends. It depends how much it goes lower, right? If it just goes a little bit lower and not to zero, then it won't affect anything. Right? As long as at the end of the year you have above Nisab again, then you will just take the amount that you have at the end of the year. Okay. Can I pay zakat before the year is finished? Yes, very good question. I was going to talk about this. Thank you for reminding me. Um, Zakat could be given ahead of time and it could be given later as well. Let's jump back here. Okay, so most people, they like to give their zakat in Ramadan. Okay, because there's more reward at that time. But as you can see, you can't really choose when your zakat year starts, right? Because let's say when you were younger, right? You were 17, 18, you got your first job or something, and since then you've had money. Okay, you never went broke. Whatever was the first paycheck you got back then, that's when your zakat year started. That's the date of your zakat, right? And 1 year from that date, every year until now, you're supposed to be paying zakat. But people like to pay it in Ramadan. So depending on when your zakat date is, okay. If you don't know exactly, try to just guess the closest, and go with that. Okay. Um, so let's say, for example, if your zakat date is after Ramadan. Okay, let's say it's in um Dhul Qa'dah, okay, or Shawwal, anything after Ramadan. So in that case, you will try to estimate how much wealth you will have at that time. Okay, let's say right now, for example, we're just a few days before Ramadan, and you want to pay your zakat on the first of Ramadan. So you're gonna think ahead. Okay, you know your expenses, you know your income, everything, and come up with a number that you think you will have 2 months from now. Okay, once you have that, you pay zakat on that amount. Then when that time actually comes, you reassess and see, did I calculate correctly? If you did, then it's good. If not, then you make up for whatever mistake you had made. This is if your zakat date is after Ramadan. Okay, if it's before, let's say if it's in Rajab or Muharram or anything, then you still need to take out your zakat at that time. Okay, because that is when it is obligatory on you. So there's a few ways to do this. Either you could physically set aside that amount of wealth. Okay, meaning you go to your bank account, whatever, and you withdraw that amount of cash, and you keep it aside. That this is my zakat wealth. I'm not going to touch this. Right. So doing this, setting aside your wealth, it fulfills the obligation of discharging your zakat. Now, what's left is for the zakat um to arrive at the recipient. Okay, but from your part, what you have to do of taking out the zakat, that part is done. Now, what you can do, you took out that zakat. Now, wait till Ramadan. Wait till Ramadan, then you discharge it ahead, and you'll get the reward of doing it in the Ramadan as well. Okay. Now, if someone has absolutely no idea when their zakat date is, then it's best to just choose a date of any date of Ramadan. Some people choose the first, some choose the one of the odd nights at the end, some choose the last night, whatever is your preference, and you make that your zakat date. Okay. And one other point I want to make here before moving on, in zakat, we have another question as well. I'll address that in a second. Um, in zakat, we always take the cautious route. Okay, what I mean by that is, if there's a zakat calculation, whether it be about amounts or about dates or something, and we are not sure if we're doing something correctly. Of course, the best thing would be to consult someone who could help you with that. But if that's not possible at the time, then you always take the higher amount. Okay, let's say you're doing the zakat calculation and it comes out to $220, and there's something, you have some asset, you're not sure if the zakat is due on them or not. If you add zakat, if you do count zakat on that, it'll add maybe another $20, $30. So take the cautious route and always add more. Okay, because what's going to happen, if you give extra zakat, then that will just be counted as sadaqah for you. You'll get rewarded for it still. It won't go to waste. But if you give less, then you could be held accountable for that by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. If someone has savings on zakat date but could foresee some expenses that are fixed and are coming soon, like insurance or kids' tuition fee, then still the amount of zakat date. Okay, it's a good question. We're gonna talk about that, inshallah. Okay, we're gonna talk about debts. We'll talk about expenses that are coming up. Which one of those can you minus from your zakat, and up to how far ahead can you do that? We'll talk about that, inshallah, when that comes. Okay, gold and silver. Starting with gold and silver. The nisab of gold, as you see in front of you, is 87.48 grams, and the nisab of silver is 612.36 grams. What does that mean? A very important point right here. Use nisab of gold if you only own gold. If you only own gold. Okay, so if you don't have any money of your own, you only have gold jewelry, then you will use the nisab of gold, meaning you will get your jewelry. There's two ways to do it. Either you can weigh it, have it weighed, and see if it weighs more than this, and then take 2.5% of that weight and give that away. Okay, or if you want to pay zakat of gold through cash, then you can get your gold valued. If the value of gold is more than the value of 87 point, if the value of your gold is more than the value of 87.48 grams of gold, then you pay zakat on 2.5% of that. Okay. Let me again point out the difference of opinion. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah says that there's no zakat due on gold, which is for the sake of jewelry. Okay. Other imams say that no, there is zakat on that as well. If you own mixed assets, as most people will have, okay. Now, mixed assets, this could mean only cash, or it could mean any combination of assets, gold and silver, cash and silver, cash and gold, cash and investments, cash and something else. If you have mixed assets, then you will use the nisab of silver. Okay, so you can make a note of this, that if you have only cash, or if you have mixed assets, you use the nisab of silver. Okay. Another way of looking at it is that you will only use the nisab of gold when you have only gold. Every other situation, you will use the nisab of silver. Okay. And there are some websites online that give you the nisab on a regular basis. The best way to calculate it is to just Google the price of silver in Canada today and per gram, and then multiply that by 612.36, and you'll know what the nisab is. It's around $420, I think. Okay. This point here, if the gold or silver are mixed, they're not pure. Like in the case of gold, for example, 24 karat is pure gold, right? So that means anything less than 12 karat is less than 50% pure. So if you have less than 50% pure, then zakat is not due on it. Okay, if that's all you have, if you don't have other wealth. But if it's more than 50%, then you'll pay zakat on that, no matter what. Okay, if you have less, then let's say someone has one bracelet which is 10 karat gold, and the value of it is, I don't know, $100, then you will add that to your other cash, to your other assets, and you pay zakat on it together. Okay. Now that's an important point to keep in mind, that zakat, your nisab, is calculated based on the combination of your assets. Okay. Otherwise, If all your assets are less than a nisab individually, but together they are more, zakat will be due on them. Okay, keep that in mind, please. And the stones, gems, diamonds, rubies, and so on, they are not zakatable. They're not gold or silver. They're the stones. There's no zakat on those. Cash and liquid assets, like we said, that for zakat on cash, use the nisab of silver. And like we said as well, if you own gold, silver, and cash, or more assets, then you take the combined value of all three and pay zakat to 2.5%. Yes, you look at them collectively. Right. Okay, we have one really quick practice problem here, right? Because we want to make sure everyone is with us. So take a look at this. It's a very simple one. The person has some cash in the bank account, cash at home. This is the value of the gold, value of their silver. Try to calculate how much zakat does the person have to pay. Okay, based on what we've learned so far, this is an easy problem to calculate, and see if you can come up with the amount. And then on the next slide, we'll look at the answer. Okay, take a few minutes if you need it. If you want, when you're done, you could type in the answer in the chat. Okay, we have some answers coming in. Give it another minute, and then we'll look at it, inshallah. Okay, let's see what we have. So all of the types of wealth here are zakatable, because zakatable means zakat is due on them. So we're just going to add them up. Add them up, you get 5950, and then you take 2.5% of 5950, you get 148.75. Many of you got that. Good work. All right. Okay. Any questions to this point? Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm thinking we could take our break. Next, we're going to talk about debts and then loans. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in. If there are, you can send them in. Let's let you guys take a little break. So right now it is 11:55. Let's come back in 10 minutes. Okay, 12:55. At least for those who are local here. Do you have to pay? Do we have to pay without the debt? We're going to talk about the debts next, inshallah. All right. So let's take 10 minutes and let's come back, inshallah, and then we'll move forward. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can send them into the chat and we'll address them when we resume, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah, everyone. Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. Let's continue inshallah. So we had a couple of questions come in over here. We took a look at them. Can we set aside the zakat on the zakat date and pay throughout the year, or do we have to pay all at once? You could pay it over time. That is fine. Or you can pay it at once. Both are okay, as long as you have taken it out at your zakat date. Now, one point to keep in mind about this, okay, regardless whether you're paying it at once or throughout the year, is make sure someone knows in your family that you are doing this. Because if you pass away throughout the year at some point and no one knows, that zakat obligation will remain unfulfilled. It won't be discharged on your behalf, because like I said, there's one aspect is you taking out the wealth. It also needs to reach the recipient. Right? So make sure someone knows, someone trustworthy, your husband, wife, your parents, anyone, and then by all means do that, inshallah. Another question, home husband. Okay, I'll address this when we get to the section of properties, inshallah. All right. If I forget, please remind me. Okay, let's talk about debts. When we look at zakat, there are two types of debts. One are those which are deductible, and one are those which are not. Simple enough. Now, which ones can you deduct? Which ones can you not? You see three categories in front of you. But before that, make sure you understand what we mean by what you could deduct. Okay. It's very similar to something like a tax deduction. So basically, if you have, let's say, $20,000, but you have deductible debts equal to 5,000, then you will only pay zakat on 15,000. Okay. Just like in income taxes, if someone's income is, for example, 40,000, and they have some tax deductions of 3,000, they'll be taxed on 37,000 or 40,000. Very similar idea over here. Okay, so the first category is, let me turn this back on. Okay, the first one here is debts payable in full within 12 months. Meaning, you owe someone money. Okay, you took money from someone, and you need to pay it back to them, and you're gonna pay them within 12 months, within the next year. Okay, 12 lunar months. Okay, not that big of a difference, but sometimes it could make a difference in a few days. So if you're gonna pay that back within 1 year, then you will deduct it from your zakatable assets. Second point is if you are paying something in installments, could be car payments, could be home payments, you can't deduct the entire amount. Okay, because usually these types of payments are of large sums, and if you're permitted to deduct all of it, you would never have to pay zakat. Okay, so we look 1 year ahead. 1 year ahead, what payments do you have to make over the next 12 months? You can deduct those from your zakatable assets. Now, in the case of something like a mortgage or a car finance, if it is an interest-based one, we're not getting into the impermissibility of that right now. But if it is, then you cannot deduct the interest portion of it. It's only the capital. Okay. Or if it is some type of arrangement where you are paying capital for a property and you're renting it at the same time, then you will only deduct the payments of the capital, not the rent. Okay. And this is actually the more lenient opinion. There are some senior muftis who say only you can only deduct that month's worth. So if someone wants to be extra cautious, then you deduct only 1 month's worth, not 12 months. Okay, but you are allowed to do 12 if you want to take that route. Okay. And then arrears, meaning any overdue payment. Any overdue payment. So it could be, utility bills, it could be phone bills, internet bills, anything that when your zakat date comes, those are owing in your account. You can deduct those from the zakat you have to pay. Okay. Now there was a question that came earlier about debts that I said I would. Yeah, if someone has savings on zakat date but could foresee some expenses that are fixed and are coming soon, like insurance or kids' tuition fee, then still the amount is zakat date is all zakatable or not. So, if you know there's going to be expenses coming up, then you can't deduct those. Okay, but because those are they're just expenses, they're not actually debts. Okay, debt is when you take something and then you owe it back, right? So expenses that are going to be coming up, you can't deduct those. What fuqaha have permitted is what any expenses you have of that month. If you haven't paid it yet, then you could deduct it. Okay, so if that's tuition or if it's a utility bill or something, whatever you're gonna pay of that month, your phone bill, etc., internet, you could deduct that, but now not what's gonna come up in the future, right? Same thing with insurance and so on. Then you have non-deductible debts. Okay, you have it right here. Sorry, I forgot it's coming up here. Future expenses and bills. Okay, so like we said, because it's not actually a debt that you got, you have to pay it back. You cannot deduct those. Secondly, something that is not payable in the next 12 months, whether it be in the installments or in the full amount, whatever is after that, then you cannot deduct that. Okay, and what falls under this often is student loans. Okay, so student loans, unless you are in your last year of study, well, how it works for some of you don't know, is that you take loans as you are studying, and you pay it back after your studies. Simply put, okay, and then there are ways to do it by in which you can avoid paying interest and so on, but you only have to pay it back after your studies are finished, right? So let's say you're doing a 4-year program. If you're in your first, second, or third year, you can't deduct your zakat. You can't deduct your student loan from your zakat. If you are in your last year and the time to pay back your loan is within one year, then whatever amount you plan to pay back in that time, you could deduct that from your zakat. Okay, but if you some people, they pay back their student loans over time throughout their studies, right? So if you plan to do that, you estimate how much you plan to pay, what your intention is, and you you deduct that amount. Okay. Question. So I subtract the expenses from the zakatable money. No, expenses you do not. Okay, future expenses you don't. Only ones of the your current month that you are in, you could deduct. Expenses that are going to come in the future, you can't deduct. You can't subtract. Okay. And then unlawful income. Unlawful income. If someone has wealth that they gain through some unlawful source, then zakat is not due on that, nor can that would that, if it is a type of loan or debt, would be used as a deductible. Okay. So this mainly plays part in things like mortgages. If people have interest-based mortgages, then the portion of the interest, the mortgage, which is interest, cannot be deducted. Only the capital. Okay. Any other questions about debts? Next, we're going to talk about loans. I just request something. I forgot to mention this in the beginning. Whenever we give you a chance to ask questions, if you're going to be typing it out, just type in yes first, so that I know that you're typing in your question. Um, unless sometimes I don't think someone is asking a question, then we move on. Okay, what about principal and interest over the next 12 months? What can you deduct? Only the principal. Only the principal. So let's say we're going to see some examples up ahead. If you're paying, 1,500 for your principal and 500 is interest, then you only deduct the 1,500 times 12. Right. And if anyone wants, you could use your mic as well to ask questions. Okay, no need to be shy. Okay, loans. So loans are of two types. The terminology used is weak debt and a strong debt. Okay, debt receivable. A debt receivable is a loan, meaning you gave someone money and now they owe it back to you. Right? That's what a loan is. You loan someone money and they give it back to you, or you are owed money in some way. So the weak debts, actually the weak loan, it's when you are going to receive, you are owed money, but not because you gave someone money. Okay, you are owed money, not because you gave someone money, but something happened because of which they owe you money. Okay, you have some situations mentioned here for you. Wages, okay, salary. You didn't give your employer money that now they owe back to you, right? No, you worked and now they owe you money for that. Rental income. Rental income that you're going to be receiving. Okay, because again, you haven't given your tenants money that they're paying back to you, right? They have to pay to you because they're using your property. So any rental income that's going to come in the future. If you're a woman, your dowry. Okay, you didn't give your husband something, that money that is giving back to you now. He owes you that because of the marriage. And lastly, inheritance. Someone in your family passes away and you are to receive your inheritance. If you haven't received it yet, then all of these fall under weak debts. What does that mean? What's the ruling of a weak debt? You do not add the amounts of the weak debt to your zakatable assets. Okay, you don't add it at that time, even though you're owed at that time. You don't add it at that time, and nor will you backdate it later on when you get that wealth. So, for example, someone's father passed away, and they haven't received their inheritance yet. And in that process, because it takes some time, there's the zakat date comes, right? So now, because you haven't received that wealth yet, and that wealth was never in your possession beforehand, that you gave it away and now you take it back, you will calculate your zakat as though that wealth doesn't exist for you. Okay, same thing for wages to be paid. If your employer hasn't paid you this month yet, the month of your zakat, the month where your zakat date falls, don't say, okay, no, he's going to pay me this month, so I'm going to calculate that. No, that too. No, you haven't received it yet. It's as though it doesn't exist for you. So you will not count that into your zakat calculations. Okay, and once you do receive the funds, you won't backdate it either. So let's say, for example, if in the case of dowry, Okay, let's say the dowry for a woman was $1,000, and the husband hasn't given it yet. The wife said it's okay, you can give it later or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. So now 5 years passed. For those entire 5 years, that $1,000 was still with the husband. So he will pay zakat on it normally because it's part of his wealth. And even though the woman is owed that money, she will not pay zakat on it. Now, when she receives it after 5 years now, she won't backdate it either. That okay, every year if I had it, I would have paid this much zakat. No, you don't have it, you don't have it, you will not pay zakat on that. This isn't one of those cases where if you want to be cautious, you could pay on it. No, it's just not for you. Like I said, that money doesn't exist. Okay, so you don't pay zakat on that. If you do pay zakat on it, it's going to be extra sadaqah. It won't count as zakat. Next, as you can imagine, we have strong debt receivable, strong loans, and in the weak loans, it was when you are owed money without giving anything yourself first. So this is the opposite of that, where you are owed money because you gave something. Because you gave something, right? So you lent someone money, some person, some organization, and now you are to receive that money back. You will see now. Either you have a couple of options. You could add that amount of wealth to your zakat at that time and pay the zakat on it. Okay. And even though the money isn't in your possession, it's still yours. You still own that money. Okay. So you will pay zakat on it every year with your own wealth. If you want, if it is a long-term debt loan, like more than a year, then you could wait. You could wait until when finally you receive that loan back. If you choose to wait, then you will backdate your zakat. You will backdate your zakat and see how much you would have had to pay every year on that amount of wealth if you had it with you. Okay. So let's say, for example, the loan was of $10,000. You gave it to your friend. Let's say you gave it to the masjid. You give them a loan, qarda hasana, of $10,000. Now, every year when you calculate your zakat, you could include that in your zakatable assets. Okay, and pay zakat on it as normal. And then when you receive the money back, you keep paying zakat on it as normal. Or you could wait. Okay, let's say if you don't have other cash or wealth that you could use to pay off the zakat of that 10,000, and you want to wait till you get it back to pay zakat from that wealth directly, then you could do that. You can do that, and you will backdate it. So every year for the 5 years that pass, you'll see, okay, on the first year, I would have paid zakat from the 10,000 this much, right? And then the next year, you will minus what you paid the first year and calculate zakat on that, right? So from $10,000, it would be $250, right? If I'm not mistaken. So 2.5%. The next year you would calculate the zakat on 9,750. Okay, and the year after that you would calculate on 9,500, and the year after that you're calculated on 9,250, and then 9,000. Right. So every year you're because the zakat that you would have paid from that wealth would have been reduced, right? Because you're paying zakat, and the next year you don't have that money that you used to pay the zakat with. So you treat it in that way. You treat it just as it would be if you had it in your possession throughout the entire period. Okay, this is if it's a long-term debt, meaning more than 1 year. Long-term loan, more than 1 year. Okay, if it's short, if it's you're gonna get the money back that year, then you pay zakat on it when your zakat date comes. Okay. Now the last point over here, that if you gave someone a loan and now they're refusing to pay you back, now the situation would need to be assessed to see exactly what is happening. But if you know that most likely you are not getting back your money, okay, and that person has gone away somewhere, they can't be found, or someone stole your money and you know there's no chance of finding it, or you lost it and you no idea where you lost it or where you put it, then you would not add that amount to your zakat. Okay. Then what you do is you will choose the second option. Then you will wait and see if ever somehow you do get that money back. Then you will backdate it and pay zakat on that amount. Okay. Any questions about debts or loans? Okay, we have a question here. If you give loans through a line of credit and we're getting monthly payments back from them, which is going back to the line of credit. If you give a loan through a line of credit, in a line of credit, you take a loan. Unless I'm misunderstanding your question. And you're getting monthly payments back, which is going back to the line of credit. Oh, okay, you're giving someone a loan on your line of credit. Is that what you mean? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if you're giving someone a loan from your line of credit, then it's gonna be the same thing pretty much. That wealth still counts as your wealth, and when they're making payments back, it's going to your line of credit. Then you can see either at that point, whatever has been paid back, you pay zakat on that, and then the rest when you get it later on, or you could wait until sorry, either either you could pay it at that time and then pay the rest later on, or you could pay it on the full amount, like now every year, as the loan is paid back over time. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions about loans? Okay, let's do some practice problems. I think there's a few here. Yeah, there's 2 of them. Okay, so this person, let's call him Zaid. Zaid has some cash in the bank, 8,200. Zaid has some cash at home, 1,500. He has some gold, which is valued at 3,200. He has some silver, which is valued at 700. He has a monthly car finance payment that he pays, which of $300. That's the capital. He has given the masjid a loan of $2,000. and he he wants to pay zakat on it now. He doesn't want to defer it. Okay, and he has $1,000 that he owes to his friend that he's going to pay back within the next year. Okay, so keeping these points in mind, um, try to see how much zakat does they have to pay here. Okay, take your time, think about it. I'll give you like 5 minutes, and then if you think you've got it, then you can send in the answer in the chat, and then we'll go over the solution. All right. Give it another minute. I've already gotten many answers, uh, and every answer I got it is different. So that means someone may have it right, but everyone else has it wrong. So look again. Again, I'll remind you that the loan given to the masjid, he he wants to pay zakat on it now. He doesn't want to defer it because the loan owed to the friend, he's gonna pay it back this year. So that means you will deduct it. Okay. The car finance, this is the full capital. It's gonna be times 12. Okay, this is per month, monthly car finance. Okay, so keep those things in mind. If you misdid something, then look at it again. There is one person who has sent in the correct answer. Okay, take another minute and then we'll go over it. Okay, let's look here. The correct answer was 275. Okay, so Sister Yasmin had it. Good job. Okay, the rest of you, nice, good efforts. Let's look at where you may have gone wrong. All right. So, cash in the bank, cash at home, value of gold and silver, and the loan owed to the masjid. The loan the masjid owes to Zaid. All of that is what you're going to pay zakat on. That's what makes your gross assets over here. What are your deductibles? Where the car finance, we said this is the full capital times 12 months. So that's 3,600. And the loan you owe to your friend, which you said you're going to pay back this year, that means you could deduct it. That makes 4,600. So you deduct 46 from 15,600, leaving 11,000. And then you take 2.5% of the 11,000, which is $275. Okay. Any part of this anyone did not understand? Please let me know. Okay, because this could very likely be the type of calculations many of you had to do. You have some gold, silver, some cash, some small loans, some debt. So we deduct the bigger expenses. I'm not sure what you mean by the bigger expenses. If it is money that you owe for something, right, then it's a debt. It's not an expense in that sense. Right. So yeah, so like a water bill, like you're saying, for example, that's not something you owe money for yet, because you haven't used that money yet, that water yet, right? So that you won't deduct, right? But something like a car, you already bought the car and now you owe money for it, right? So you're gonna deduct that amount, 12 months worth of that. Okay. And on that note, let me mention that a car lease is not the same as a car finance in this discussion. Okay, where it isn't in any discussion, but because when you're leasing a car, you're renting it. Okay, and that's just like renting a property, where you're paying each month for the usage of that month. So you could deduct that month's worth of your lease payment, but not of what's coming up in the future. Whereas in a finance, when you finance a car, you're buying the car out completely. You've already bought the car, and now you owe the money back. Right? So when the car is being financed, you could deduct it. If it's being leased, you cannot. Okay. And in any case, even in the case of finance, it's only on the capital amount. Okay, let's look at another problem. This is very similar, but you have some different things. So let's look at it first. You have cash in the bank, cash at home, gold, silver, monthly mortgage. This asterisk means this is the capital amount. We already took out the interest, if there was. Okay. Then you gave the masjid $10,000, which you want to pay zakat on now. You don't want to defer it. And you have $1,000 that you lost. And you have no hope of finding it. So try to calculate this. Again, take 5-7 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll go over this, inshallah. Again, I'll point out that the loan given to the masjid, he wants to pay zakat on it now. Okay, let's say this is Fatima. Okay, she wants to pay zakat on it now. She doesn't want to defer it. And then she has the money that she lost, and this is the capital amount of her mortgage. So again, if you think you have the answer, send it in into the comments, inshallah. Okay, so we've gotten a few answers. Let's take a look at it. What are we doing here? We have cash in the bank, at home, gold, silver. As usual, we add all of these up. Then the loan given to the masjid. Like we said, we want to pay our zakat on it now. So we're going to add that as well. That gives you your gross assets of 38,500. What are your deductibles? Well, your monthly mortgage times 12. Okay, that gives you 20,400. The cash that was lost, well, it's lost. It's as though it doesn't even exist for you anymore. Right? Now, if you find it back later on and you want to, then you will backdate it and pay zakat on it. So you subtract your deductibles from your gross assets, that gives you 18,100, and you multiply it by 2.5%, and you get 452.5. So Sister Sumayya got that. Good job, mashallah. The rest of you were pretty close. And actually, a couple of you sent in 427.5, and I wonder what you did to both get the same answer. Is there something that do you know where your mistake was? Subtracted the 1,000. Okay. All right. Any questions on this for anyone? Doesn't the mortgage take the ruling as a lease since I don't fully own the house until it's paid? Well, technically, in a mortgage, you the house is in your name, so you do own the house from that perspective, and then you're making payments toward that you owe on the house. So for that reason, it'll be deducted, right? And the fact that every payment you make, it increases your equity in the house. That also further proves that point. Whereas rent, for example, you're paying rent and you're not getting any equity in the house. So that's why that difference. Yeah, if it's in your name, it's yours. You will deduct it. Yes. Okay. Okay. Next, we have the discussion of businesses, which is a bit lengthy. So I'm thinking we will call it a day for today. There's about 10 minutes left. We won't be able to cover the full discussion of businesses in that time, and I would like to do it all together. So we will stop here, inshallah. Jazakallah for attending, everyone. If you have any questions, there was a question that someone asked about properties. So please save that question, and then tomorrow, after we talk about properties, if your question isn't answered, then you can ask that again, please. Okay. Tomorrow, inshallah, same time, 11 o'clock, and we'll get into some more detailed things: zakat on businesses, on pension funds, RESPs, RRSPs, zakat on stocks, investments. All of that, inshallah, we'll cover tomorrow, as well as who zakat can be given to. And I think the last section is what do you do if you have missed zakat in the past. So inshallah, all that we'll do tomorrow. We'll have some more practice problems as well tomorrow as we learn about more zakat and different types of assets. We'll add them on into our practice problems, and inshallah, we'll take it from there. Inshallah, if you have someone who would like to join tomorrow, feel free to share the link with them. We'll start with a quick recap of today. Tomorrow we will start with a quick recap of today, very brief, and then move on. So someone did miss today's program and they want to join tomorrow, they could join in and they won't be completely lost, maybe just a bit. All right, Jazakallah, everyone. We will you will get the code. Yes, inshallah, after the program is finished tomorrow, it will be sent out the course, the material, as well as the link to the recordings for whoever wants to access them. And they'll be posted on Al-Ihsan's Facebook and YouTube pages, inshallah, as well. Okay. Jazakallah, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.